else would like to speak?
I'll say something.
Good.
I'm David Gill. I had the pleasure of getting Ward to hire me back when I was a grad student at Columbia in the 70s. He hired me to do something that would surprise you, which is to manage a global conglomerate of multinational companies. Learning was right next door to the future home of Philip Morris. Learning Resources and International Studies, CIPA, the Council for Intercultural Studies and Programs, a network of 500 colleges, a program bringing 200 professors of world relations together to produce 7 volumes that are still in every college library, and all operating under a front provided by New York State called the Foreign Area Material Center. I distinctly remember people coming to the office, which was one room, and saying, "Well, where are the other floors?" One thing to know about Ward is all those briefcases he carried, they were the records of the company. He literally would have a file drawer in each one, and sometimes he would carry 3. Specially made heavy leather briefcases. I don't know if there's still some left. He, in all that time, was deeply committed to making sure that he ran companies that worked. That is, he astutely did budgets, he made sure there were meetings, there were boards, there were records, every form was filled out. This part sometimes we forget. He knew what a corporation was supposed to do and what good governance was. Now, in the midst of all this multinationalism, very few of you may know that he pioneered outsourcing. I don't know how many of you got memos dictated en route to Amityville, Maine, transcribed in India, sent back to Albany, forwarded back to me or to Cynthia, and then mailed out all over the country. I would go to Albany for multiplication in their copy machine. So all of this time, while Ward was struggling with being trapped in an institution like New York State, he was figuring out how to take advantage of it, working with bureaucracy, building networks, reaching out to people, making it happen. And all the lessons I've taken from him, some of them I had to fight. Like, for a while, I was rolling my eyes up in my head, just by being with it. And, or carrying extra heavy bags, there's a lot of people in this world. Today, we have electronic mail. He generated more real mail than most people do with emails. And what we draw from this, his ability to create networks, before there was social networking, his ability to leverage what he knew and what he stood for and get other people to sign up for it, his ability to make a publishing company if he couldn't get it published and bring others in. It really said, even if you don't have anything, if you have something you stand for and you're willing to really think it through and explain it to people, pretty soon it's a movement. Pretty soon it's a company. Pretty soon it's a network. And just so much can happen. I know how many people have been touched by CoClad. I just wanted to mention all the faculty in international studies programs and things like that that have also drawn inspiration from him. And what he did for helping people understand other cultures and understand how important it was in a time where globalism was more of a cause instead of today what localism is. So understanding that interdependence and now coming back to independence, I would say Ward is the kind of man who can bridge that. And thanks for having me. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Brian Mooney. I last saw Ward about a year ago when he and Carolyn came down to New York City, where I live. So I'm I'm similarly timeless as this. You came down to visit Occupy, so we went to Zuccotti Park. And I could see that he was delighted by what was developing, but I also knew that he'd been promoting these ideas himself for a very long time. And I also thought about how we both got there. It was through very different life pathways, but both involving Bhopal. So in 1984, I was a lawyer for Union Carbide. I survived. Just as you, I was always worried about, I've spent about 3 years in Bhopal. Whenever I go, I'm worried if I tell people that, it could be the end of me. But most people understand the logic behind leaving that behind and moving on to a different kind of life. So I worked at that law firm, and those people are still working that case, by the way. They're still collecting legal fees. But I gave that up. I became a cultural anthropologist, and I've spent about 3 years in Bhopal studying the disaster from the standpoint of the survivors. I know the people who wrote those letters that Maud read a while back. I took Ward on a tour in 2009 on the 25th anniversary of the disaster of something called, are you ready for this, a solar evaporation pond. Union Carbide, when it generated toxic waste, it needed to do something with it. So they built solar evaporation ponds, as if the toxic waste would just evaporate. Well, it didn't. Instead, it went into the groundwater. People drank that for decades. For the last 12 years, there's been a lawsuit pending against Union Carbide and now Dow Chemical in New York City about the contaminated water. There are cases pending in India as well. Ward was very familiar with those cases. I took him on a tour. You can see our tour on YouTube. There's a Bhopal Medical Appeal channel on YouTube. You can see different things about Bhopal. I bring that case up because the judge who first heard the Bhopal case in 1984, ironically or coincidentally, he's 83. He's still on the bench, and he's still handing down decisions adverse to the survivors. Which, when I heard that Ward passed away, I felt demoralized because he was so effective in pushing this issue. And I knew that Judge was still alive, and in June he issued yet another dismissal of the cases. But I'm re-energized today, I guess, because what I realized in listening to everyone is that although I know the corporation, at least for now, is perpetual, I was afraid that people are not, and we lost Ward. But what we don't lose is his commitment that has been communicated to all of us, so we can be as perpetual as Union Carbide and Dow are. They're not, they didn't win, it's not over, but we all have to carry his work on our own way. Thanks.